So what are high-end speakers about? Is it just about the price? Is it just about the high price tag? And some will tell you exactly that. It's just about the high price tag. There's nothing special about these high-end speakers. Well, I beg to differ, but that's okay. We can have different opinions and we can still be friends. This video is about my opinions. I reviewed and heard many high-end speakers. And from my experience of doing so, I found that obviously when it comes to comparing affordable products or speakers you had before that cost less, and you're moving to a higher price tag speaker, loudspeaker, then of course you want to hear a performance difference in all aspects. But I also found that when it comes to high-end speakers I've tested, they usually do specific things very well. They're hyper-focused on things that are meaningful to the listener. Meaning, if you ask someone, what is the definition of a high-end loudspeaker for you? Well, the answer varies. And I've done this at shows. I've talked to many people and tried to grasp what they value. And at times, it's soundstage or detail and what have you. And we've heard it many times where someone goes, these high-end loudspeakers are not worth it. And I decided to ask why. Why do you think it's not worth it? Why do you think it's not a high-end speaker for you? And the answer that came back all the time, it all varied. It was never the same answer from different individuals. So the answer varies depending on their value, is what I found, right? So for example, the first listener may value detail. Now, if the speakers are a laid-back speaker, it may have the best soundstage in the world. It may have depth. It may have atmospheric 3D holographic sound staging. But the listener number one doesn't care about that. They care about detail. How crisp, how sweet the high frequency is. It's all about the high frequency for this individual. Then, of course, this loudspeaker, no matter how great of a loudspeaker it is for another listener, it's just not the right fit for him. And same thing can be said about a person who values sound staging. Right? So someone that values sound staging may listen to a loudspeaker that has great balance, great tonality, great overall bass performance, and really, really nice mid-range and all that kind of stuff that we look for as audiophiles. But if it doesn't soundstage wide and deep like a horn-loaded loudspeaker does, then maybe that's not the speaker for them. They might find it unworthy of the high-end sound. So really, the point I'm trying to make is that the high-end sound differs for everyone. But I can make one generalization, and that is that from my experience, all high-end speakers that I have tested that are good high-end speakers usually do one or two things exceptionally well, and the buyer or yourself may be really into that. So today, I want to talk about how to choose the right high-end speaker using the Certaldo speakers as an example. So these are Certaldo loudspeakers from Rosso Fiorentino. This is the second series, so this is the Certaldo 2. And this loudspeaker is different from virtually every loudspeaker I have tested in the high-end audio category. But at the same time, it has similarities. So let me explain. So first off, if you're after detail, if you're after brightness, right? If you're after exciting high frequency, like a more forward-sounding high frequency that you would find, let's say, in Focal loudspeakers or magical loudspeakers, then this is not it. This is a laid-back sounding loudspeaker that has great balance overall and doesn't have a forward-sounding high frequency. But here's the thing, I love Focal and magical speakers. I can't listen to it for a long period of time because I'm very sensitive to high frequencies, and overall, I prefer a more warmer toned speaker. However, I do appreciate Focal and magical speakers, like I said, in the fact that they have this amazing spatial cues and imaging capabilities that you can really draw out. And that is amazing. But again, not for a lengthy period of time as I get ear fatigued. Well, this loudspeaker does exactly that. It has amazing, and I mean, one of the best imaging capabilities I have ever tested and listened to. And right off the bat, that is the key ingredient of this loudspeaker. That's the key strength of this loudspeaker. And I personally think it fits a really nice category because up until now, it has always been a tug of war, at least for me. For a speaker that to image well and, to an extent where you can draw things out like vocal or magical speakers, but at the same time, I don't want brightness. I want laid back, warm kind of character. But virtually any speaker that came in here that is a warm sounding speaker, they have good imaging, but not to the extent of the vocals or magicals. So it was always a balancing act. But this loudspeaker, the Certaldos, the strength here is that it's a laid back loudspeaker, but it has imaging capability just as good as vocal or magical speakers from my experience. It's a little bit baffling and unusual when you listen to it for the first time because you don't expect that kind of imaging where you can draw out literally everything, including the stage itself, when you listen to a laid back loudspeaker like this. At least for me, I find this to be quite a rarity in the hi-fi space, especially considering that a lot of loudspeakers these days, especially in the high-end category, seems to concentrate a lot on detail, retrieval, being spacious and all that, and that comes with the unfortunate reality that not a lot of these loudspeakers are laid-back loudspeakers. Most of it is on the neutral or a little bit on the cooler side, and that's why I love speakers like Sonos Faber loudspeakers, right? Because yes, they don't have imaging and sound staging like the Certaldos or vocals or magicals, but they have a really nice mid-range tone and overall laid-back sound with reasonable amount of imaging and sound staging. But most importantly is the tone that I love on the Sonos Faber loudspeakers. Well, the Certaldos don't have exactly the same tone, even though they are both from Italy, especially in comparison to something like the Electamotor 3 or the Maximas that I reviewed. Both speakers are amazing, but the Certaldos are more balanced in nature. It doesn't have a mid-bass rise or a character that would be a little bit more warmer or lush or for the lack of better words, chocolatey and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm talking about. It doesn't have a alluding tone to it. It's mostly balanced and easygoing. And when you listen to it for the first time in a non-optimal setup, you may find it actually close to speakers like Dynaudio, where it's neutral, balanced. For example, Dynaudio Heritage comes to mind, right? It's kind of similar in terms of the overall balance and tone. But the Certaldo I will find a little bit more warmer than that, just a slight tad bit. And this is a slim loudspeaker, which may suggest why it has the sound staging capabilities as it does. So yes, if you value being able to hear into the music, then the Certaldo loudspeakers are exceptional at that. But because it's a high-end loudspeaker, I expect it to do other things well. For example, a slim loudspeaker that's affordable in the affordable category may not have as of a deep bass like the Certaldos do. It may not have that control of the bass or texture or nuances in the bass like the Certaldos do. For example, the Orendo 1961 had tremendous mid-bass punch and dynamics, but it did not have deep low bass. Like I mentioned, it's not very good at extending low, and that's expected especially in the affordable category when it comes to slim loudspeakers, because of the cabinet volume, the drivers, and etc., the compromises that's made when it comes to affordable slim loudspeakers. Now the Certaldos, I expect more because it's a high-end loudspeaker. Even though it's slim, if I'm spending more money, I expect better performance overall, and that includes the bass. And I'm happy to say the bass is exceptional on this slim loudspeaker. It has deep, linear extension that is satisfying, warm, and deep in texture, nuanced. It is a very quality bass that's well controlled, doesn't get boomy, so I have no problems with the overall bass performance and the overall performance as a high-end audio loudspeaker. I think it fits the bill. The bill, by the way, being about $10,000 US. But I think it really does punch above its weight, specifically in the sound staging department, especially if you're looking for a laid-back sounding loudspeaker and you value sound staging, exceptional sound staging and imaging, then I think this loudspeaker is definitely worth your attention. So a few more important things to note about the Certaldo 2s specifically. First of all, it uses a soft dome tweeter. It has a 1-inch silk dome tweeter, and it has a 5.25-inch woofers, 3 of them, and it's a 2.5-way loudspeaker, 88 dB in sensitivity, and a nominal impedance about 8 ohms, I believe, 8.6 ohms. And it doesn't drop below 5 ohms. So what does this all tell you? Well, first of all, it tells you that this speaker is fairly easy to drive. Your amplifiers don't see it below 5 ohms. So it's easier to drive. 88 dB in sensitivity tells you that it's enough volume that you're going to get out of these speakers when you power it with low-powered amplifiers or whatever amplifier you choose to go with. So it may aid in the decision making depending on what high-end amplifier you may already have or plan to have in the future. So that's a good indication. Again, it uses a silk dome tweeter. How to find a high-end loudspeaker for you is an important question, right? And that is another thing to look out for. You may have demoed a lot of loudspeakers. You may find that soft dome tweeter is just not it for you. And even though that generalization doesn't always work, as I've heard silk dome tweeters that are on the brighter side than the neutral side or warmer side, it really varies. But there are certain characteristics that's inherent to the tweeter design. For example, AMT tweeters or metal dome tweeters that you may like more. So yes, while you don't want to make the overall generalization and say all soft dome tweeters sound soft or all AMT or metal dome tweeters sound brighter, not exactly correct in the whole grand scheme of things, but it at least gives you and narrows it down to stuff that you might be interested in. So it is a valid thing to do, but again, be careful not to overgeneralize in the grand scheme of things. Another important thing to do when you're finding the right high-end speaker for you is probably making sense of your space reasonably. So meaning, you may absolutely love the Certaldo 2s and how I describe it. You may be like, oh yes, laid back sound, good to go. Deep bass, good to go. Texture, good to go. Sound staging and imaging as the main focus and what it specializes in, absolutely, that is all you love. But if you don't have the space, meaning if you can't pull these speakers out 2-3 feet out into the room, then you're not going to get that sound staging. Remember, sound staging largely can be appreciated when you have the speakers set up properly. And that is the exact same for the Certaldo 2s. If you push these speakers back close to the wall, then you're not going to get the deep and wide soundstage that I'm talking about. Yes, they will still be more exceptional than the affordable counterparts or other speakers that may not image as well even in the high-end audio category, but you're just not gonna get the full potential of the sound staging and depth if you can't play around with how far you have these speakers out into the room. Meaning, when you pick out a high-end loudspeaker, yes, you have to watch out for, can you really appreciate this loudspeaker in the space you have? And if you don't, the answer is, maybe you need to search for something that you can in the space you have. So another distinction here is that this loudspeaker has a rear firing port and a port at the bottom of the speakers. So it has 2 ports, meaning that you may make the assumption, again, an assumption that this loudspeaker may require some space from the wall behind it and was designed to do so. And especially because when a reviewer like myself says, or your friend, for example, says, well, this speaker is all about sound staging. And the reviews are saying this speaker is about sound staging, it's all about sound staging. And when you hear that, and in your space, if you can't have speakers out into the room, if you have no flexibility of pulling speakers 2-3 feet out into the room, you can't play around with the placement, then you can't really hear that sound stage, can you? You can't recreate that sound stage that we're talking about. Not to mention that this speaker is rear ported and also has a port at the bottom to enhance the bass and that deep textures, so you may benefit from pulling them out into the room a little bit more than your other speakers that you have experienced. So these all kind of play into a factor in deciding, well, is this speaker the right fit for my space? So not only are you talking about taste of what you're looking for, but also the space you're in and making sense of that. Another big factor, again, is gear matching. Again, any good high-end loudspeaker usually likes high-end gear for the same reasons. It complements what they're good at. And the AGD is a great example of that. The AGD monoblock, this is not a tube amplifier. In fact, this is a Class D amplifier. But in fact, it is one of the best, absolute best Class D amplifiers I have ever touched, listened, be in the same space with. Absolute glory. This is a really good Class D amplifier that is small, compact, but very powerful. With the Certaldo 2s, the bass is extremely textured, but more than anything, it really enhances what the speaker is all about. The sound staging, the imaging, the depth, I can really hear into the music. It is an absolute journey and a half. It is an incredible match. I can't recommend it highly enough for this combination. Another good combination is the Norma, right? The Norma 140 integrated amplifier. Very good. I mean, the bass, the texture, everything, the sound staging, the imaging, very, very good. But not as good of an imaging or sound staging as the AGD combination, I would say. But again, if you want an integrated amplifier, just a one box solution with volume control, DAC, and all that, then the Norma is a great choice. Another great combination is the Hagel H600. This is the newest Hagel integrated amplifier that replaces the 590. And what can I say? The bass is by far the most textured, the most controlled out of all the amplifiers, including the AGD amplifier that I have tried. The bass is extremely linear. It's more amount in even, right? So there's more bass to be had. It's textured, it's round, it's authoritative. Really, really impressive. And the sound staging and depth is incredible, as well as the imaging. I would say the AGD by far enhances the imaging and sound staging the most, with overall great balance and tonal characteristics. And the Norma 140 as well as the Hagel H600 is on par in terms of imaging and separation, sound staging and all that kind of stuff, bass control. But the Hagel H600 does have a little bit more bass control and extension, which I love. So notice how I chose my amplifiers here after trying a lot of different amplifiers. I have narrowed it down to 3 of my top choices as my recommendation. Now, what do all these 3 recommendations have in common? Well, 1, bass control, because these do have tremendous bass, you want them controlled. So bass control, quality of the bass is what I looked for, but most importantly, all 3 of these amplifiers have a common thing, and that is that all 3 of these amplifiers are good at enhancing the sound staging and imaging of what the speaker is already good at. So again, if you buy something like the Certaldo 2s and you bought it because you obviously value the laid-back presentation as well as the sound staging and imaging that it gives, then why not find an amplifier that enhances exactly that? And that is really what I look for when I find the right pairing, the right synergy with a high-end loudspeaker to get the most out of it. Now, I left the last one for the last because this one's kind of obvious. I mean, when you buy a high-end loudspeaker, for a lot of us, I can't speak for everyone, but for a lot of us, including myself, looks do matter. You don't want to spend 10 grand on a loudspeaker and it looks like a shoe rack, right? You want something that looks elegant, and the Certaldo 2s are exactly that. It has many different finishes, but the one I have is red leather. So again, if you don't want leather, they have options for that, which is great. But the front is leather, the sides are leather on this one, and it's just gorgeous. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm a sucker for these kind of Italian craftsmanship. I mean, I said it in the Sonos fiber speakers as well. Absolute beauty. It's crafted. I wouldn't even say it's made. It's crafted. I mean, the binding post is minimal looking, but you can touch it and it's high quality. It's easy to use and intuitive as well. And from my understanding, this is like an in-house made binding post that's copper and all that kind of stuff. The cable that's internally in the speaker itself is from Vanden Hall, I believe. So high-end speaker cables inside this as well, used as internal cables. So again, all these little things matter. So when I say that these loudspeakers I think is even better than Sonos Faber or Focal or Magical, I don't mean that they're indefinitely, like by fact, that these are better. No, I don't mean that whatsoever. I mean that this is a good balance between both of them. It does what Focal and Magicals do well, and it does some of what Sonos Faber does well as well. So it's like almost a in-between. And for those that have been looking for a speaker like this, like myself, then yes, the speaker is better. But for others, it may not. If you don't like a laid-back sound, then this speaker may not be better. So it really depends on your preference and your definition of high-end audio loudspeakers. So that's it from me. I hope this video was helpful and enjoyable. And if it was, please click the like button. It helps the channel out and it doesn't cost you anything. And make sure to subscribe for more videos just like this on audio. And I'll see you guys on my next journey. Until next time.